split along the center line. But then there's the vacation of the subdivision, and I think those are separate laws, but I don't know practicality if you are going to if you split along a roadway even during a vacation process, like subdivision vacation process. I don't know the distinction in my head.
Why wouldn't this just be treated like any other road vacation?
It's not a road vacation.
Well, it's county right away, isn't it?
Well, they're vacating the subdivision just in this area, but they're not vacating a road expressly. They're vacating the subdivision. They're making it revert back to meets and bounds land. The question, and it's a good one, is do the roads split like we would on a road vacation? And I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
But who would be the owner? They haven't been deeded to the county, so
I don't either.
who would be the person that would derive the benefit from
Well,
selling those lots?
I would assume the county if it would have been a county road, but if they hadn't been deeded, then they're not the county's to
Right.
own. I just wondered
But
the
it's a good-
process
it's a good
because
check.
there are, hundreds is probably an exaggeration, but there are multiple of these in the county.
Oh, yeah.
So Cindy, are you saying that would affect their assessment if they acquire more? I mean, because if that was deeded to the county and they pick up that little bit more, is that going to change their assessment?
Probably.
Assessment? Yeah, just curious.
Because, I mean, it may go up, it may go down, it may change, because instead of having 23 lots, you now have 10 acres, or I don't know, I can't see that far away, but we would assess it differently. And part of my question is just like, because I think about Summit, and there's the exact same thing in Summit, and I'm like, I know a subdivision that maybe is coming in that's wanting some road access or some access for water, and those roads are platted in, but are not part of a road, and there's stuff out in the valley, and I know a number of different places, and I'm just trying to make sure that we have a process in place that will apply no matter who it is or where it is, and
to the historical part of that was we got stuck is the short answer. We got stuck in Summit on this question.
And we're going to be again if we don't have a good process in place, because there's more than just the one gentleman in Summit or probably in Newcastle or whomever. So that's all. I just wondered if we
So down
happened to
on
those
this particular case, Reed,
split and given to properties on each side. That's the vacation. Our county ordinance specifies that we follow the state statute for vacating roads, and that's what we followed in this process. And that specifies in state law that the center line is given equally split to properties on each side when the road's vacated by the public.
whether it's a road
Whether it's
in practice or just a road on file.
so in this case then, Reed, because the same owner owns on both sides of the road, that person will get
Oh, the whole property. So. And these numerous subdivisions like this that were built are platted but nothing done is kind of the cause of the last problem we had. Because the no developer, they put in the roads, they put in something, but they did not bring it up to county standard. And so anyway, we hope that within 300 years we have all these sorted out.
it's a cautionary tale.
We've done 4 or 5 of these in the last couple of years. We've done a couple.
That's good. We're making good progress.
We did Iron Springs, we did Aberdeen, those whole town sites where they were 25-foot railroad lots.
Right.
125 feet long by 25 feet wide. We vacated all those, vacated the roads. That property went back to the property owner.
So we're making good
We've done
progress.
A number of these in the last few years.
Excellent. Are there other comments or public comments for regarding this issue? Seeing none, Chair declares the public hearing closed, and I would entertain a motion.
I would call for approval for a proposed partial vacated and amended plat of Garyville Town Site survey south of Utah State Highway 56, borough located in the southeast quarter of Section 32T, 35S, Range 16 West, Salt Lake Basin, Meridian, and Iron County. And I would make that subject to getting the signatures needed on the plat.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the proposed partial vacation and amendment plat of Garyville Townsite as explained in the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And who's Gary? Does anybody know who Gary is? This is named after.
It's his town.
Okay. Item number 4, public comments. We've had a bunch today, but we're open for more. You know the drill.
Oh, yes, I know the drill. My name's William Pressgrove. I bring before you today a hypothesis mainly. Each one of the citizens of this county are sovereign citizens. And according to the reaffirmation in the Utah Constitution, we have inherent and inalienable rights to acquire, possess, and protect property. Now, by having those rights, I also have the authority to delegate to others the protection of my property, like the sheriff, like the fire department. And we all delegate to them to protect our property, and we pay them to do so. However, I've got a question for you. Because I'm a sovereign citizen and I have the authority to protect my property, does that mean that I have also the right to demand or force, say Commissioner Cousins, for example, to put tulips out in his front yard? Do I have the authority to force him to do that as an individual? The answer is no. If I took all of these people here, they all have the same authority as I do as citizens. Do we then get together and force him to put tulips in his front yard? The answer is no. We do not have that authority. Therefore, we cannot delegate that authority to the sheriff or the fire department or the county commission to force anybody to do anything with their property because they have the inherent right to protect their property. My suggestion then is for a discussion to take place that would give you the opportunity to rescind the mandatory rulings that you have on the table of uses, on the zoning codes, where you say that we can't do anything with our property without the county's permission. We didn't authorize, we did not delegate to the county the authority to tell us that we can't do anything with our property until we have approval from the county. That needs to be discussed, and you need to come to a conclusion that unless the individual has the authority to delegate to you to do those things, then the zoning codes and stuff should be recommendations, not mandatory.
Thank you for your comment. Are there other comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, resolution 2019-5, appointing a Board of Equalization for the Sunset Subdivision Assessment Area, setting the dates for the Board of Equalization to hear and consider objections and corrections to any proposed assessments, authorizing the county clerk to publish and mail a notice of assessment, and Board of Equalization hearings and related matters. And so, Dan, sorry you had to stay here all morning, but anyway, we finally got to you. Reed, thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is resolution to accomplish really two things, and then as on the agenda, related matters. Matt Dugdale is here from George K. Baum to discuss the information sent out in the packet related to the financing of this project and the use of the county's bonding capacity as a backstop to help get a better interest rate for the bonding of the assessment funds for this project. So those are the discussion that we will have here. The resolution itself is trying to accomplish two things that we need to decide in the resolution. One is who the Board of Adjustment will be, and two, what the dates of the Board of Adjustment hearings will, Board of Equalization. Who the Board of Equalization will be for this project, and what the dates for the hearings will be set forth in this resolution, so that the clerk then is authorized to advertise, send notices out for those dates. Okay, as we've discussed this with Randy Larson from Gilmore Bell, who is the bond counsel, and working closely with Matt and evaluating what options we have for this. The statute allows 3 methods of establishing a Board of Equalization. One is for the Board of Equalization to be the 3 county commissioners. That's option 1. Option 2 is to have the county commission, 2 of the county commissioners serve on the Board of Equalization, and 1 of either the treasurer or the engineer to serve as the 3rd member. And the 3rd option is what's outlined in this resolution, which is to have 1 member of the Board of County Commission, 1 treasurer representative, and 1 engineer representative. The way the statute requires is that it says the engineer or a delegate from the engineer's office, the treasurer or a delegate from the treasurer's office, and a commissioner or a delegate from the commissioner's office. And that is who would make up the Board of Equalization to evaluate the assessments that would be levied against each property. In this case, the Sunset Subdivision Assessment Area. 58 properties that would be assessed equally as established through the creation of the assessment area previously. We're now completing construction of that project, and we anticipate that all construction will be done by the end of September. So laying out the process from here, this is kind of the next step from the one that we just had on the discussion about creating the assessment area on 5900. Now we've moved through, we've had the bids after construction, or after the period of creating the assessment area, after the protest period. We went to bid, got the best bid, went to construction, and now construction is nearing completion. We anticipate that all construction, chip sealed roads, everything will be all done by the end of September at the latest. Steve anticipates maybe even mid-September.
Pending weather.
Pending weather. But he's guaranteeing it by the end of September. Because that's the outline that we've made now on this dates for the assessment areas.
We get
Good
that in
question.
writing and a signature.
So anytime we have an assessment area, then there has to be a new Board of Equalization formed just for that particular
That's correct.
assessment
It
area.
establishes who the Board of Equalization will be to hear complaints or filed protests against the assessments once the assessments are set out. So there's several protests. Actually, let me give you, or at least I think it would be helpful. It was prepared by bond counsel to look at the timeline of the Board of Equalization assessment area. I think I included this, did I not?
I got a copy of it.
But it's just kind of a time frame, and Matt, you've got this, of what the hearing requirements are for the Board of Equalization and how the Board of Equalization sees this. You can see on number 2 that the notice by the County Commission requires 35 plus days before the hearing. And and what we determined previously, and I guess this is another question, is whether we want to start this process with an estimate, which we could do, and we've talked about before, we would wait until the project was completed so we knew the exact costs. We still have that option, is to schedule the Board of Equalization hearings and send notices out based on the estimate. Now that we're far enough into the construction that we know we shouldn't have any surprises, we know what's there, we should be able to finish up based on this figure. Or we wait until we have the construction finished and get an actual cost with the financing, we lock in the interest rate, and Matt's here to talk about that process of getting the bond. And so following the second course that we decided previously that we would wait until the construction was finished before we went out with the notices, we had the exact assessments, then this schedule we would follow. We need to advertise fairly soon to get our plus 35 days to start the hearing process. And the reason that we want to move that along is because it's hard to lock in an interest rate. A bank that doesn't want to say, yes, I'll bond at this rate 120 days from now. And when we actually have the hearings, the way this process works is after we get the final costs, if this is how we do it, we send out the assessments for the properties. We have the Board of Equalization hearings. The Board of Equalization makes a recommendation to the County Commission. The County Commission then adopts an assessment ordinance, which is the ordinance that assesses the properties. Then there's a 60-day contestability period. So by the time the actual assessments occur, from now, a bank won't guarantee an interest rate, that far out. So we want to start the process, and we'll have to lock the rate in somewhere in the next, 30 to 60 days between when we start, get the construction finished and try to get an estimate get the best figure on the bond rate, send the notices out based on what the bonding costs and all fees and construction costs are. And that's the schedule that we're trying to follow.
So Reed, real quick, sorry. So we have a firm bid from Mel Clark on the construction.
Yes, that's correct.
So is the only variable the financing rate that
Well,
we're talking about? Because I'm confused about the costs.
The
of the
final
project.
costs, you want to talk about that?
Are there overruns? Are there change orders? Are there?
Yeah, there could be. We don't anticipate there are any, but we still don't know that until
Okay.
construction's finished. That's what we determined previously.
Building any project is just like building a house. The devil's in the details. At this point, I anticipate that the bid we have from Mel Clark will be exactly what the end of the project final cost is. But we've got a lot of tons of oil, we've got a lot of tons of chips, the tons of pit run and the tons of base gravel are pretty close to the estimate. But the chips and the oil we haven't put down yet. That's where the majority of the cost of the project is. So I can't tell you today that when we finish the project, this will be the exact cost. We have to finish the project before I can tell you what the exact cost will be, because I don't know those tonnages. And they're paid on those unit costs.
So really, the bid isn't his exact amount.
It's
Only
not a,
if
it's
we
not a lump
use-
sum bid, Commissioner. It's a
Only if we
unit
use
cost
based
on
that
certain.
amount.
Okay, that's interesting to know.
I didn't know that. Okay.
So that's why we want to wait until after we get all of the finished product, and
Makes
then we'll
sense.
know exact costs. And then we can get we can get financing costs, attorney's fees, we can have a final cost. And then we can send those assessments out. And so based on that schedule, I am suggesting that the Board of Equalization hold hearings on, and we put this in the resolution, on November 13th, 14th, and 15th. They have to be 3 consecutive days. And they have to be between 9 a.m. and 9 a.m. and 9 p.m.
Date was that
something
October?
like that.
November.
This would be November 13th, 14th, and 15th. The way that it is in the resolution is the first day would be from 9 to 10 a.m. So that would be November 13th from 9 to 10 a.m., November 14th from 10 to 11, and November 15th from 1 to 2. And that gives opportunity at different times during the day. And so that's a Thursday, Friday, or Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so that if somebody closer to the weekend, midweek.
And those are
it gives
public
them-
hearings?
Those would be public hearings for Board of Equalization protests. Board of Equalization hearings. They're not public hearings, they're Board of Equalization hearings on protests of the assessments in those areas, or on those lots. Okay?
I'm still connected.
But that's right in the middle of your Utah Association of Counties fall.
Yeah.
Fall conference.
Yeah, that is.
We could move it up a week or back a week. I've got that's depending on who wants to be the Board of Equalization and who's available. Those were just suggested dates that would fit everything with what we've got on the end of, and the advertising and everything. So we could move it a week either way, whichever more convenient. I just didn't want to get in the middle of Thanksgiving, by waiting the next week.
Right. Early would be, okay. Well, I think option 3 is the best. One commissioner, the treasurer, and the engineer. And I don't need another job, but where this is a road situation, it seems like the commissioner over roads would be the commissioner to be on this. But that's subject to vote.
Second.
So
Sounded like a motion.
So do you want to look at that week before that, in the first week in November? Like the 6th, 7th, and 8th, or something like that?
that's good for me at this point. Things change rapidly.
So you're talking
Not
6th,
dead
7th,
end.
and 8th?
Fine.
Is that what you're thinking?
Steve and
Steve, does that work?
Nicole, that work for you guys? And I've visited with Steve and Nicole if the commission decided to go this option, and they're willing to serve in that capacity if that's your desire.
Still confused. I mean, we have a cost of the project that was approved by the property owners, so how can they protest their share?
Well, for example, one of the property owners who does not have frontage on the road could protest now. They've determined that they don't want to be in this assessment area, and so they could.
Wouldn't that have to happen before we chose?
He had
to
an
do the budget?
opportunity to protest that, but they didn't know the exact figure. Okay, that was based on an estimate. State law requires that before a property can be assessed an exact amount, they have to have an opportunity to protest that assessment by the Board of Equalization. And so that's what this process is.
So when we get there, they'll be notified that they can protest.
They will
but
be
but we
notified
don't
of
sit there and
the
wait for them to walk
opportunities.
in, right? I mean, don't they have to?
They have to file
The
a
schedule.
protest prior to the, we just have to make these available times.
Available date.
Yeah.
Okay. Very
They
good.
will have to file before, I think it's the last day of the thing, so long before the hearing time, they have to file a protest. And they would be given that notice or information in the notice.
Okay.
So with the addition of as prepared in this resolution, on page 3, section 2, we would fill in those dates as being November 6th, 7th, and 8th, November 6th at 9 to 10, November 7th from 10 to 11, and November 8th from 1 to 2, we would fill on page 3. And then we would go with the recommendations on the dates or the construction of the Board of Equalization as being a one commissioner, the representative from the treasurer's office and a representative from the county engineer.
Okay. So that's the way it states in the
That's all we need for that resolution,
resolution. Okay.
I believe.
So Cindy has a comment.
Okay.
I would just ask that in the letter to the owners, we make sure that they understand. I just think if I'm a homeowner or a property owner and I don't understand all this, I'm going to think Board of Equalization, I can still go complain about my taxes for my 2019 value.
And we'll put that in a
And
letter
so-
that they can come and do that.
Yeah, but,
For your
well, but by November 6th, they will have missed that deadline. So I don't want there to be
this is not
confusion
the
and
same
frustration.
process.
I know it's not the same process. We know that. But if you're sitting there looking at your tax bill and then you get a letter that says, this is how I can protest this, they're not going to understand the assessment area is different, or the tax on the assessment area is different than the other taxes that they're just getting ready to pay in that time frame, just because we're all in that same period.
There needs to be
So-
good
yes.
clarification.
Yeah,
made
make
on
sure
that.
there's clarification.
My brain kind of had to.
Yeah, so if you just can say something, even when you send it, that if they want to protest their value for 2019, they need to call the auditor's office, because this is a separate process that will be for that assessment area for 2020. And when they get the bill in 2020, it's too late to appeal that assessment area, because that time would have been November of 2019. I just want to make sure that our citizens aren't, I mean, it's just confusing.
That's going to
So,
be. We'll have to be very careful to clarify because
yeah, if we can try to do that in the
names
letter.
are the same.
Okay. Thank you for that.
We decided on the 6th, 7th, 8th, right?
Yeah, 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Oh.
Correct.
Come on up. Tell us your name.
Dan Brummer, on the board of Sunset Subdivision. I just wanted to clarify, so the protest period is to protest the bond rate? Because we're not protesting the assessment area.
They have the opportunity to protest any aspect of this process through this assessment. Their assessment, their property being assessed this amount. They cannot like the interest rate, they cannot like the term, they cannot like the amount, they cannot like the fact that they're included in it, they can not like anything. They have that opportunity because now their property is being assessed. And they may be a different property owner than what was there when we started the process. That's part of why they go through this process, is because now here's another opportunity, and you probably had half a dozen, 4 or 5 property owners change hands since we started this process.
Really?
And so
At least 4,
this
yeah.
gives the new property owner an opportunity.
So do they have recourse, or do they just have the right to protest?
They have the right to protest, and the Board of Equalization says, hey, yeah, we can
Okay,
see there's.
okay, so that board can make, and they can say, no, it's already decided, okay, all right.
But if there is an adjustment determined that needs to be made by the BOE, then and they adjust their assessment down, then it just spills over to everybody else in their percentage, so that.
So it's a
There's an
shift.
opportunity there for rehearing. You'll see in that list, if there's an adjustment made to the assessment amount, because you determine to reduce somebody's for whatever reason, and then that cost is spread across the others, then they'll be sent a new notice, and they'll be given another chance for rehearing, and that process goes through.
Seems odd to me, though. I mean, it seems like this,
Given that
it seems like this should
opportunity
be,
for every person to have every chance.
I understand that, but it almost seems like it should happen in the beginning before we spend the money versus at the end. Because it's a shift in that assessment to the others.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just doesn't seem right.
That's why the commissioners will make that final decision and say, you don't feel it's fair, you could have protested before, it was all okay, there's some extenuating circumstances that somebody wasn't aware of, and we became aware of that, and here's what we're doing, and now, interest rates are down, construction costs wasn't as much, so your overall assessment won't be any higher by doing it this way, and you just have that.
Okay.
Okay.
Just seems like if somebody dropped out and the board, and then you might have everybody come and protest, but I
Yeah.
guess that's all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
get crazy.
Giving everybody an equal chance
Okay.
situation.
But it also doesn't move forward if 40% protest up front.
We're all done with that.
Yeah,
I
we're
mean,
done
but
with
you know what I
that.
mean, though?
That's-
I mean-
yeah.
That's
So
over.
it doesn't happen at all.
Yeah.
That's over for this process.
Right.
This process, we already adopted the assessment area, and the assessment area is being created.
But to Paul's point on
So
fairness,
It's a matter of adjusting
Yeah.
the assessments.
Yeah.
yeah. But to Paul's point on fairness, that's part of the process for that reason. If it's not supposed to move forward and you,
In that
right,
case,
right.
5900 still can.
Right.
But in Sunset Subdivision, that ship is sailed.
We're down the road, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it ought to be brought up in the beginning then, that there's this process at the end, and if somebody, if the Board of Equalization chose to remove them, that there could be a shift and it could increase their assessment. Seems to me like that's what should happen. Just to warn people.
Yeah.
That could be a real blow to somebody.
It can be a blow. I mean, we don't know what the interest rate is. We don't know what all the costs are. It's kind of a crapshoot all the way along, because we don't know if the estimates were correct on the bids, and we've gone out and now tonnage was way short, and we've got to pay a whole lot more gravel, and it's higher than what we said it was, and so all that stuff is why these processes are in place to
Yeah.
make it work. So now, do you want to act on that, or do you want to hear Matt? And let's talk first before you act on the resolution,
That would be fine.
and talk about how where it comes into play, where we actually lock in a price on the interest rate, and then we get the bonds. And that's the information that I had sent you previously. Sorry, talking from the chair. The information that we set out to evaluate the county being a backstop is a term that we've used to just say to ensure a better interest rate, or use the county's bonding capacity, because these assessment bonds, and Matt can explain this better than I, are different than all the other revenue bonds that we do. Sales tax and all of the other revenues, we do a parameters resolution where we set all of the stuff up front. Assessments are different. Assessment financing has all this lengthier process and has this 60-day contestability and everything, which normal bonds don't have, the normal revenue bonds, all the others that we've done before, the stuff that we've gotten money from CIB on the buildings and the projects and all these other things are a different type of revenue stream. Assessments are unique in that there are specific rules to how those are done because properties are actually being assessed differently, individual properties just in that area for specific improvement. So they're not general obligation bonds, they're not, revenue bonds, or not any of the other things we normally do. And that's why this is a little unique. And Matt is qualified and appreciate his expertise in helping us articulate the county's role in getting that financing. We're not just taking those properties and saying the value of those properties, since we're assessing those properties, will be leaned for the value of this improvement. We can do that, but the lending institutions may not give us as good a rate because the deep pocket county, with all the other revenue sources available to it, if they step up and say, yeah, we're supporting this and we'll back it, then they're more willing to give a better bond.
Better
So
bond,
with that
okay.
introduction, I'll let Matt fill in all of the blanks.
Okay, thank you, and welcome, Matt. Thanks for driving down from Salt Lake
Sure,
to
it's-
this beautiful county. I'm sure you enjoyed your drive.
I
And
did, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to be in Iron County. And Reed covered all the exciting stuff. I have to cover bond. Bond starts with a B, which means boring. Appreciate Reed's words, and certainly he covered a lot of really great things. Maybe I'll just piggyback off of that. Yes, the county has a lot of options to finance this project, this road. And as Reed mentioned, you could issue county debt secured by sales taxes or other revenues of the county. And generally for roads that benefit only a particular area, the practice we generally see is an assessment bond. And as Reed explained, it is what is the lender or the investor buying? They're buying the county's ability to levy an assessment on that property, and then those property owners' ability to pay those assessments, because that's the revenue that if you were the investors, that you would get that money. And so there's always concern from the investment community. Well, tell me about the properties, and so we have to tell them about the properties. And what we do generally is structure an assessment bond with what we call a reserve fund, and that equates to about 1 year's worth of payment. And that money is set aside in an interest-bearing account. It's restricted, and that comes into play. The county can use that money that's set aside to pay debt service, say if there's a delinquency or somebody doesn't pay their assessment, and those funds come and pay that. If it's never tapped into, it just pays the final payment on the bond, and so that year you wouldn't assess property owners. So the question then is, well, how comfortable would an investor, in this case a bank, be in lending money for this project? And certainly they would lend, from the conversations I've had, without the county backstop, but that would be at a higher interest rate. And so the options, if the county were to do this, you could have some type of a covenant worked into the bond documents wherein the county pledges to replenish that reserve fund. And that can be done by utilizing general fund monies of the county. It can be done by the county issuing a general obligation bond to replenish it. It could be done the county levying additional tax countywide to replenish that fund. And so in doing so, then the analysis that the lenders do as well, we certainly look at the properties and the property owner's ability to pay these assessments, but we also look at the county's ability to tax and to replenish that reserve fund. And so before that, though, the county always has the ability, if a property owner is delinquent and given every opportunity to pay their assessment, the county can certainly go in and do a tax sale and use those proceeds to replenish the reserve fund, which generally we see. I have seen.
we would. It's always going to be, the payment's always going to be attached to their tax notice if they haven't paid it. Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't think we want to raise taxes county-wide for the reserve fund. That seems,
Correct.
That seems like a terrible,
And you don't have to do
arduous
that.
process to go through. So, yeah. So if we have funds available, the county is the one, just general obligation or general fund
general fund
monies,
hmm
we can use those to put up that first year's
to
payment.
replenish
That-
if it's ever
that-
if that fund is ever utilized for delinquencies. You just
When you say replenish, don't you mean actually set it up? Because it's not there to be replenished, right? Aren't we just setting up that fund to begin with?
so the fund would be there whether or not the county backstops it anyway. And I say investors, but in banks would require a reserve fund to be set aside for exactly that purpose.
We're
It's
basically
just-
posting a bond of our own, right, into this fund, and it's going to be backed by a tax sale, basically, right?
so
If
right,
if it gets spent on something else, we have to replenish that with those options you're talking about. right?
correct,
Okay.
right? Yeah, it's just money set aside, and it would be set aside anyway, even if the county didn't pledge to replenish it with your resources. But what it does is it adds strength to this bond, so that investors say, "Whoa, I can now look at the county's credit as my analysis on what interest rate." It's almost as though you're basically signing on to your 23-year-old's car loan.
We need to choose
in
which
concept.
vehicle today, what we want to do.
No,
Not.
no, this is more, we just wanted to have this discussion. We don't need to decide that until we actually issue the bonds. My process, and so the commission knows, and I know there's a few property owners in the room, is my goal is to basically bid this lending opportunity out to all of the banks doing business in Utah and even nationally, and give them several options on what rate would you give us without the county's backstop, and what rate would you give us with the county's backstop, 15-year, 20-year. Compile those, provide those to Reed and to the commission, and decide on the best rate for this
So
project.
would this be considered a general obligation bond that you issue?
No, this would be an assessment bond.
Assessment
It
bond.
would read Iron County assessment area,
Sunset
Sunset subdivision assessment bond, and it's the property owners are on the hook
Okay, I thought
at the risk of
okay, that's
a tax sale of their property if they're delinquent.
Right,
well, that's right.
right.
Yeah, so it's a very much as a similar lien as the property tax.
So if things
General-
go,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
sorry, if things go really badly, the county's still, it's like if I co-sign on my daughter's car loan, like if the assessment falls through and we don't get our tax sale revenue, then ultimately we're the lender of last resort, or whatever, we're the backstop.
If you decide to,
Yeah,
right.
sorry, yeah.
Yes, it would be, and functionally it would be replenishing that reserve fund, because the monies would have to go out on time, and so then that's when you would tap into this reserve fund. It would pay the investors for that, say, September 1 payment, and then the county would use the next year to utilize its resources, replenish that fund, so that by the next payment date it's fully replenished. So that's something we can discuss, and I can do my best to estimate the difference between interest rates and what that would do for the property.
What kind of rate do you think you might see on something like this?
Interest rates have come down quite a bit. Everyone has probably seen the news, and when national turmoil is bad, that means interest rates are good. I think what I always say is I know rates will go up, I know they'll go down, I just don't know when or by how much. But I think we can get a competitive interest rate, especially where the rates are at, just as barometers. And this is a different type of bond we've recently seen. School district bonds, again, they have AAA ratings. They're bonding for 20 years at 3%. This would not be the same credit strength as a AAA rated state-backed general obligation bond of a school district. Cities are bonding for sewer projects and water projects at maybe 3.5%, and so you could interpolate from there. This would be higher than those levels, just because it's a different credit, and but interest rates are very low historically. So,
Would it be competitive with like a 30-year loan that a person would get, or would it be better than that because of the county's association?
if the county were to backstop that reserve fund, it would definitely be a better interest rate than if they were to go out without it. But then again, there's questions of precedent. If there's other roads, then, and the county did choose to do that, they would probably ask for the same thing on their assessment area.
Right.
So there'd
right.
be a set.
Our auditor, Dan Jessen, has a question or a comment.
So, and it's essentially, I have a couple of comments, but
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
No, he's one up on you, Dan.
Back to Alma's question, where does the reserve fund come from? Because I understand what we're talking about is replenishing the reserve fund in case of a, some default by some of the property owners. Where does that initially come from?
Sure. So great question, Dan. So it comes when we close on a loan, just like any loan, the lender gives you a check. So we would take that check, and the bulk of it would go to pay for the contractor's work and the cost of the project. And then the additional monies equivalent to about 1 year's worth of payments would then be deposited from that check into that account. It comes from the lender.
Okay. That was my question, whether we had to initially upfront that or not.
No.
And I've been engaged with talks with Matt and Reed on that. Just my opinion is, as much as we can keep the counties, dry powder is the phrase I like to use, dry, the better. This, I don't know as I'm necessarily against backstopping the reserve. I would definitely be flat against issuing just a sales tax bond for the whole project or something like that. Assessment bond is good, and it doesn't, it's not going to use up a lot of dry powder to backstop the reserve, in my estimation. I certainly wouldn't think it would be, like Alma said, we would want to issue bonds to cover the reserve. What we're talking about is $1 million project. We're talking about a reserve to cover one payment of, say, a 15-year or a 20-year, just to kind of give you an idea of the numbers we're talking about. It wouldn't bankrupt the county if we had to come up with some money temporarily to cover that reserve, to replenish that reserve fund in the case of a default. But
Right. We might have to wait 5 years if somebody completely defaulted and didn't pay their taxes, but to get our money back. But so that extra year, does that increase the loan then?
It does increase the loan amount, and that's disclosed to the property owners. And they may say, well, why? But that's just what the banks and investors require. Otherwise, they wouldn't loan the money for it. And so the good thing, though, is that money's placed in an interest-bearing account. It's there as needed. It's replenished if needed. But then it goes just to pay the final payment on the bond. So property owners, instead of making 20 years worth of payments, would make 19 years worth of payments.
So
that
overall,
final year,
that isn't causing them to pay more money. Is that correct?
It's not because there's not another alternative. That's just what investors require. I wouldn't be able to find an investor that would loan money for an assessment area without a reserve.
So indeed, it does increase the cost to the homeowners to have that, even though they don't have to pay that last payment.
It increases the amount that's borrowed.
The amount that's borrowed. Yeah. Okay.
They'll pay more interest because they've got to pay interest on that money. Even though it's in an interest-bearing account, it's probably not generating as much as what it's costing to set there.
Right. There is some negative. We call it negative arbitrage. Right.
Yeah.
But that's just the cost of financing an assessment area. But it's again utilized on that last payment. And
one of the questions that came up when we were discussing it was, if I am a property owner in one of these assessment areas and I opt to pay everything up front, I'm certainly going to get some kind of advantages, but am I still going to be subject to the financing costs as well?
No.
So that's only spread among those who aren't able to pay up front.
Correct.
There's
a window of time that they're given the ability to prepay, bring cash to prepay their assessment.
Would it prorate down for me if I could do some and not all?
We could look at that. It would be
Not
a
necessarily.
challenge from a legal perspective of the legal lien on the property.
I would prefer we do not do that.
Okay.
We're attaching it onto their property tax. The more uniform we can make that, the more fair and uniform I say.
This is our county treasurer.
Okay, thank you. There perhaps is a legal avenue for that. I've never seen it done, but
The concern I have is
it's a good-
somebody may want to say, look, I can pay some but not all, and you would say no.
I say we stick with our pure 3 options.
Okay.
And they could put that money in an account, and they could use that to make their annual assessments. We do see at times, though, perhaps 5 years down the road, property owners being able to pay the rest of their assessment off. If they've paid annual payments, there can be mechanisms work into the documents and with the lender being basically told that after a certain date, prepayments are allowed. And so perhaps after 5 years, if someone saves up, they can pay, let's say using simple numbers, their assessment was $100 and they've paid $50, then they could upfront the next $50 at the beginning of year 6, and then their property would not be assessed anymore. But everybody else would remain the
Okay,
same.
Reed has.
And upon the sale of a property, often that lien is paid.
Mm.
So there has to be that mechanism built in too.
Correct.
Sure.
That assessment would be paid upon the sale of the property.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
But the sale of one person's property does not affect
Right.
everybody else. Everybody else still pays the same. That's how it's billed and how it's programmed.
What about the overall bond with the county? I mean, say a bunch of people hit that mark, paid it all off, had some property sell or whatever. I mean, clearly the county's not going to pay as much interest if the bond is paid
If it's smaller.
quicker. Yeah.
Now, are you saying on
So yeah,
the county were to issue a
bunch
sales
of
tax
people
bond?
pay early, pay it off, pay their portion off early.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would presume that's going to affect the county's.
Right. It
Bond
would reduce the
interest.
outstanding principal amount and the interest that's charged on that. I will say though, if there is a sale of property or someone does prepay in a few years, they actually get credit for that reserve fund. So their percentage of that reserve fund goes towards their paying off of their assessment amount.
So if they owed 7 years, really they'd probably have to pay 6, or would.
Yeah,
Okay.
that concept is exactly right. So that's all taken into account.
So a lien is placed on each property
Correct.
when we do this process, and then if somebody sold that property, would that lien be satisfied, or does that new owner assume the yearly tax assessment?
They can do either of those
Either or.
options.
So they can choose
prepay
to just pay it.
or they can pay off.
That's what you're saying, they get a credit for that prepayment.
If they decide to prepay it off so they don't have to pay annually anymore, then they'll get credit from, we'll take some money out of the reserve fund and pay off use some of that towards that prepayment
portion.
cost.
Now, you may have already answered this question, but okay, say 40% of the people, say it's a $100,000 debt, and $40,000 comes in right up front. Does that savings in is that the right word, to the other people that just have to pay it?
So I would prefer, and there's mechanisms in the calendar and the statute that there's a window of time before we finalize that loan from the bank, and so people that are going to prepay, let's have them prepay before we lock in that borrowed amount. So they'll receive a window of time to come up with that money, and if the 40% comes, great, then we only bond for 60%. So that would be my
Okay,
what I would
thank you.
recommend.
Those people obviously financing costs.
Right.
Because they've prepaid. But the option for those that can't do that can finance it over time. So.
Thank you.
Dan Brummer has a comment.
Please, Dan.
You could come up, Dan.
So with this reserve, you're saying, let's say it's $1,000 a year per lot owner, they would have to pay $2,000 the first year for your reserve?
No.
Okay.
So it's a $1 million project essentially, or $950,000. So we would take half a year's pay or a full year's payment, and the lender would give us if it's $950,000 for the cost. We would also require the lender to give us an extra $50,000 to set off into this account.
Okay.
So at closing, people don't need to bring more upfront because of the reserve fund. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and the next question is, would it help the interest rate if maybe half the people want to pay it in full?
No, because those people just aren't assessed in the bond, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, doesn't. Okay.
Yeah.
The interest rate on 500,000 isn't going to be any better than on $1 million.
Right.
That's what he's saying.
Right.
Okay, now our engineer, Steve, has a question.
Let's all remember, we've told these folks it would be 20 years. They asked, we normally
For
do
20
10,
years.
they asked for 20.
Yeah.
We told them it'd be 20.
Okay.
And we'll certainly request that from the banks and some banks will lend out 20 years for this type of a project. We may not receive bids from every bank for 20 years. Some banks are only willing to lend for 15 years. And so we'll do our best to procure as many as we can for the longest term possible. Is there a likelihood that no banks give us an option at 20 years? Yes, that could happen. I can't control that. It's a function of the market and the bank's abilities to lend.
Moving
So-
forward, would it be better to try to stick to a 15 because of that reason?
We just we can't exceed, depending on what the interest rate is, we can't exceed the amount that we send out as a notice to say this is what your assessment will be. We can't exceed that. So by shortening the term, depending on what the interest rate is, it may exceed.
I'm not
that.
talking about this project. I'm talking about moving forward on other projects. That's what I meant.
It can change, and so I would recommend the county get a sense from its, hopefully me advisor, but yeah, on what the banks are willing to lend at for these types of projects. But
I have a question on process. In terms of that period in which a person could prepay, how long is it, and is it set in the resolution?
We'll do that in the assessment order.
it's worked
Okay.
into the.
Okay. So another, okay.
The assessment ordinance that we will adopt after the Board of Equalization makes a recommendation to the County Commission, the County Commission will adopt the assessment ordinance which actually assesses the properties. That will have the specifics in it as to, that's what's conditional for 60 days. So maybe it's that 60 days then that we give them to pay up front, because that's when the final assessment would be made.
Okay.
Okay. Any other information you have for us?
I told you bond starts with a B, which means boring. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt.
So just to review the schedule then, and Matt, the timing, now that we've moved the meetings up, our first advertising date that we have to have the final costs and an interest rate to be able to send the assessments out would be October 2nd. Okay, that's 35 days prior to the November 6th hearing. And that's when when we have to have the first notice out, and within 10 days of that, we send the notices out to property owners. So the question is, can we have an interest rate and something done by October 2nd? Well, probably the week prior to that, so that then we know what interest rate we're gonna use and do the assessments.
We certainly can. We can have an interest rate by then. Because of the 60 days, there may be some pushback from the banks saying, well, here's the rate today. Well, if we're awarded the bid, we have to peg it to some type of an index. If it's going to be, if we have to close after the 60 days, banks are a little bit hesitant to hold a rate beyond 30 to 45 days. We can work with them. It may be pegged to a rate, some type of an index, a treasury index, but we can work through that. So.
Okay.
Okay.
So that would be our recommendation as staff, is to adopt this resolution based on the hearing dates as previously established. And we should be able to meet all of the deadlines for construction, final costs, bonding costs, finance costs, attorney's fees, and everything to begin advertising on October 2nd.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions or comments? I would entertain a motion on the resolution, Iron County Resolution 2019-5.
Okay, I'll move to adopt Resolution 2019-5, appointing a Board of Equalization, which would consist of the engineer or his representative, the treasurer of Iron County, a commissioner, and those dates of the hearing would be November 6th, 7th, and 8th, the 6th being from 9 to 10 in the morning, 7th, 10 to 11, and the 8th from 1 to 2. And this is for the Sunset Subdivision Assessment Area, to hear and consider objections and corrections to any proposed assessments, authorizing the county clerk to publish and mail a notice of assessment and Board of Equalization hearings in related manners. And that, and also to note that the advertising date would need to be held or sent out by October 2nd. That's 35 days prior to the first hearing.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. You've heard the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. I won't try to repeat that motion. That's good. Try to repeat. Okay, thank you all. It's quite a process, but we're so happy that you folks are going to have a really nice road in your subdivision.
I went out last week while you're signing that. It's where they've slicked up that gravel, every speck of it that was crushed, and made that hole really big in the ground. It looks good.
Okay, there's my fast signature, and it's slightly different than the other one. Let's see, that whole, has he got more than one copy? Maybe this is, I guess that's all stuff that John has to sign, so. Same one. Item number 6, resolution 2019-6, designating the Bryan Head / Dry Lake Snowmobile Trail, presented by Brett Hauser of Bryan Head Town. Good to have you with us, Brett. Welcome.
Glad to be here. Basically, we're proposing that the commission consider this resolution stemming from some concern from members of our community up there in Bryan Head, who are snowmobilers or their business relies on snowmobiling, and when the Monuments, is it Monument or Monuments Academy, went in up there on Dry Lakes Road and worked out an agreement to clear the snow off the road. Some of the members of our snowmobile community started thinking, well, geesh, what happens if, there's further development down the road and we start to lose some snowmobile territory. So they wanted us to approach the commission and see if there was some sort of official designation that could be made for that particular trail. And as I discussed it with Reed and members of the county staff, we wanted to build some sort of flexibility into that as well, because we understand that development can happen out there at some point on Dry Lakes Road that would require clearing the snow. And so we wanted to try to create some sort of resolution that would be that would acknowledge that there is a trail there that we would like to preserve, but also allow for flexibility if we do need to move the trail at some point. And so that's what hopefully this resolution I've drafted in front of you accomplishes both of those things.
So if the road's cleared of snow, you're just talking about moving the trail off the road, close to the road?
We would just look for some sort of alternative route, or potentially locate the trail, the snowmobile trail, in the shoulder of the road for portions of the road or something like that, which is another alternative we've used in Bryan Head when we have to
So
have
you
the
could,
trail
you could
adjacent
groom
to it.
the shoulder and have that trail.
Yeah,
Does
we've
that
done
work?
Yeah, we've
So
done
it's still
that.
on our right of way, the county right of way, or is it a private road, or is it county, or?
County, Dry Lakes is a county
It's county road.
Okay.
Summer only, except for this part now up to Monuments Academy that they maintain in the winter.
So again, really the point of this is so there's some kind of official designation of the trail, so that in the future when people come to the commission to talk about clearing that road, there's something in the back of your mind saying, oh, hey, maybe we should bring the snowmobile community in Bryan Head into the conversation, and we can work out how we need to redesignate the trail moving forward if the road needs to be cleared.
Because it had to be moved off the road, you'd have to work with the private property owner.
Yeah, we'd either, if we're moving it off the road, we would have to work with private property or find alternative route through other county roads, which there are some in there that could be used, or like we were saying, just share a stretch of the road and have both vehicle traffic and normal vehicle traffic and OHV traffic.
Anticipate
right away.
signage?
What's that now?
Do you anticipate signage?
How do you mean?
I just wondered if we'd have to be paying for some signage.
If we got to the point where we had to share the right of way with, I want to say that we use signage for that to just help designate that. It's more like don't drive on the on the snowmobile trail.
Yeah.
'Cause that messes it up. But obviously we could, if it came to that point, we could work something out. And I mean, the town already acquires
and we have
that sort of
resources,
signage,
so I'm just curious on that.
Okay, 2 questions. So from 143 to Monuments, is that going to be able to work into this? Are they going to be willing to share the road? Is there room there to do that for that section?
There's some members of the community who felt like that was an important stretch of trail. The town council's not asking the commission to consider trying to reestablish a snowmobile trail on that stretch. It really doesn't go anywhere. It just goes down to
Once you get to 143, you're stuck.
Yeah,
So,
I've heard that maybe some people used to park there and snowmobile in from Dry Lakes Road on 143, but we'd rather they come up to Bryan Head and park there and start their snowmobile journey from there, and then maybe come back and eat in one of our restaurants or something like that. So we're not asking for that stretch to be reinstated.
Well, having tried it, sometimes the lower elevation snow isn't that good.
It's not great.
Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, depends on the year.
Depends on the year, yeah. So that's too
So
bad that is
the
coming.
map that we attached starts right around that. What is that road that plugs in kind of in the middle of Dry Lakes Road? Is that 800 something? Yeah, but it's called something. It's called 800.
It's part of the
North or something.
resolution.
800 or yeah.
It's called Aspen Drive.
It's called Aspen Drive in Bryan Head. But I was saying the county, it's called like
Now we probably got a road.
800 North or something
Number
like
on
that.
it.
But anyway, it's that road right there.
Yeah.
That kind of really the only intersection in the middle of Dry Lakes Road there. So from there out to Dixie National Forest and on to High Mountain is basically what we're.
So a good portion of this does go through national forest lands also, right? So.
Yeah, so before Bear Flat Road hits Dry Lakes Road on the, what is that, the south, I guess.
Does that help at all?
Yeah. Yeah, so do you see where it says to High Mountain on the
Mm-hmm.
left side there? Dixie National Forest is going to start just before that on Dry Lakes Road. So yeah, some of that red line is actually in Dixie National Forest, so and wouldn't be the county road, but.
Okay, I wish we had Preston here because I know, certain roads across the forest we do maintain. And I'm not sure exactly
In the summer.
where, in the summer only. Yeah, so it
Yeah.
would be.
But
So-
for purposes of what we're trying to accomplish with this resolution, we're not concerned about, the whole Bear Flat Road and anything in Dixie National Forest, because there's not going to be any development out there that would require clearing the roads in the winter.
Yeah, that's true. There's not going to be development on the Dixie National Forest, good point. So, Steve, did you have a question? You raised your hand. I didn't.
Yeah, but he answered it. I was gonna ask him specifically what he was talking about, then you gave us the map, so, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, any concerns, questions on this? Mike, do you have any concern that this will lock us into anything that we shouldn't be locked into?
It seems to be pretty general, or not very specific in locking us into anything. It just says that the county commits to preserving access. If you have to clear snow, the county will work in good faith, identify a reasonable alternative route. So it doesn't really lock us in to anything specific, at least as far as I can say.
That doesn't commit us to acquiring private property permission or anything.
What I am wanting to know is, does it really identify what the routes are?
Well, can the map be included with the resolution?
Says that the Bryan Head Dry Lake Snowmobile Trail is presented in the attached map, designated as a snowmobile trail. And I'm trying to figure out where I'm looking on the map. So where it says there on the top left to Highway 143, that's the road to Aspen Drive that you were talking about? Is that right?
I might have sent you guys the wrong map. The map that I printed off, I apologize. It's pretty close, but the map, I actually made an alternative map that pulls out this red piece from here on up. So that wouldn't be included.
Okay.
I have a copy.
Can I just look at that real fast here? Thanks.
So,
Mike, this is what we're calling Aspen Drive. Road here.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, that's it, okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering about the part that's north of that.
And that's what's not on the map anymore.
Okay.
so basically that part that's labeled Trail A, is that
Yes.
right here?
Yeah.
From essentially right here.
Yeah, from there down. So yeah, like
Where is that?
that's Dry Lakes Road.
Bird cut off.
Oh, okay.
So where are we in relation to monuments right there?
Monuments
Further
would be
south.
north
Monuments is
of that.
Way north. Monuments Academy is cleared up here.
It's down where the yurts are.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So it's
The,
down Dry Lakes
the
Road.
concern, and I don't know what the road situation is here, but I know that on the way to Monuments Academy, the private property owners on both sides of the road, I think have been pretty adamant that we're not gonna be expanding or widening the road, is my understanding.
That's correct.
And I don't know what the property situation is here. That's why I asked where it was in relation to monuments, because I think the county's already kind of allowed monuments to move the snow.
We have, yeah.
So we don't want to be in a situation where we're promising two different people two different things, you know. But if I don't know, I guess I would just ask the county if we feel any need that we're gonna be plowing the snow there, then maybe we wanna think about it for a minute. But if we're not, if we're comfortable with that area on the amended map, not the one that's included in the packet. So the one that's included in the packet, from play area, what's labeled play area on the map, going north is not included.
Correct.
So I don't know if we have any concerns. I don't know what they would be. I don't know what else is there. Reed, do you have any concerns or thoughts about that?
No, not with the flexibility, and I apologize to Brett for, we discussed this some time ago, and then we had several things, you know, and then Monuments Academy was part of that, and so we're supportive of this because we believe the flexibility is there when the time comes that we need to plow that. If we get a new ski resort up there, for example, and we need to plow that to get access to that, then
Yeah,
we will
eliminate
get
that,
with Brian Head and sit down and say, okay, well, this was a snowmobile route, now how are we gonna continue to maintain that as a snowmobile route? That's all it's asking for. So I don't think we're being obligated
So are you
to
good with this?
tie anything in that would restrict us
With
from
the
the
attached
future
map,
of
it'll
being
be
able to
correct
do
now.
economic development.
Is there room, if they plow that, to have two cars pass and still have the groom trail on the side? Is there
There is in
adequate?
some areas, and I think that's what we could discuss in terms of setting down and say, how do we make this work? Maybe we plow it differently and maintain the green side, you know, and maybe we switch to the other side, or, you know, and that's what we could work out.
I
as
would
we
think
sit
you'd
down.
all want to have a seat at the table to discuss that, right? Work it
Exactly.
out.
I think that's the point of this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any other questions, comments?
Reed, is any of this part of, go through the Green Meadow Acres subdivision? Where there's a dedicated road right away?
Green Meadows?
I don't, I'm just, off the top of my head, I'm not seeing it, but it's that, yeah, it's right in there, but I don't know off the top of my head if that's,
Well, it's,
Yeah.
you're talking about right here.
Yeah.
yeah.
Some of this goes through there. plow that or maintain it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a wintertime, yeah.
And we actually went and acquired
Oh, yeah, we gotta have, we may have to call.
a fellow named Tippets, I believe. There was one little hang up in there where the snowmobile trail was not on a public right of way. And we actually went in there and acquired an easement from him last year to resolve that particular issue. But so we keep referring to Dry Lakes Road here, but it's actually Dry Lakes Road and then the roads that go through Green Meadow Acres there, and I think there's 2 subdivisions there.
The up and over part.
And the up and over part.
Ski View. Yeah.
That if anybody ever came in and plowed in there, then we, asking the county to plow in there, we want to work out an alternative. That one I don't think would be too hard because there's so many roads in there. I think working out an alternative in there would be pretty easy.
Okay. I just wondered if there was right away. Yeah.
Same issue where it's in the right of way and we can make it work. Now they're gonna have to acquire additional.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, concerns? I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve resolution 2019-6 designating the Bryan Head Dry Lakes Snowmobile Trail.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve resolution 2019-6 designating the Bryan Head Dry Lake Snowmobile Trail. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
John, we have go ahead.
Who should I send the
Corrected map?
the corrected map?
To me, please.
Okay, I will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brett. Okay, here's the sign. That was in your motion, right? The corrected map?
Not it was meant to be.
Okay, we're good. All right, John, we have a meeting with Tom Peters at 1:30, and we're still gonna. Have you got somebody that could call him and tell him it's probably gonna be 2 or?
Yeah, and it would be Dan. I'll go find Dan.
I got it.
Okay.
That is-
Got it? Okay. Tell him we hope we can be with
I want to say, what did you say, what time?
Where does he come from?
Salt
Salt
Lake.
Lake.
And the meeting's at 1:30. We're gonna be at least a half hour late, I think. So, thank you.
6.
Item number 7, discussion and possible approval of an agreement with At Your Leisure, AYL, to develop a 360-degree photo view of 2 off-highway vehicle OHV trails in Iron County that will operate through Google Street View and other current and future platforms. These maps can be used by the public to attract interest to the Color Country OHV trail system. Each 360-degree photo shoot will cost $3,500, which the county will pay, and which the county will be reimbursed from the State Division of Parks and Recreation. Mike Worthen is here to address this.
That's basically what it is. The state is trying to encourage more use of the trails throughout the state, and have come up with this program to where they have set a block of money aside for this purpose, and what we're asking for is an agreement with AOL so they can video shoot this or photo shoot it, and it will also be access to the county, and it will be on Google Maps, so the people can look at it, take a virtual tour of it, whatever else. And so that's basically what we're asking for, is an agreement with AOL so they can do the work, and then we can build or we can pay them and get reimbursed through the state or Division of Parks and Rec.
I saw Chris Haller on TV the other night. There was quite a lot of interest in this, and he was talking about this. So, yeah, it seemed like a no-brainer to me
like
with
a
the
great
full
idea.
reimbursement. So,
Agreed.
Well, I'll move for the approval of an agreement with At Your Leisure to develop a 360-degree photo view of 2 off-highway vehicle trails in Iron County that will operate through Google Street View and other current and future platforms. These maps can be used by the public to attract interest to the Color Country OHV trail system. Each 360-degree photo shoot will cost $3,500, which the county will pay, and which the county will be reimbursed from the State Division of Parks and Recreation.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded that we enter into approve the agreement without your leisure as mentioned and described in the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Hey, you want to get me a signed copy of that agreement?
Yes.
And I can move on.
Thanks for your work on this, Mike.
In fact, Mike, it looks like Alma's the last one to sign there. Will you walk it down to Chanel, and that way it's done?
Okay, we're moving a little faster now. Item number 8, discussion and recognition of exceptional efforts during a recent murder investigation and trial presented by Commissioner Michael Blake.
I'm just gonna move to strike that one off for now in the interest of time and preparation.
Bring it
So
back.
we'll just bring that one back.
Okay. Item 8, we'll bring back. Item 9, present, and possible approval of Iron County investment policy. Man, must be lunchtime or something. Presented by Nicole Rosenberg, our county treasurer. Thank you, Nicole.
You guys are welcome, and I'm hoping mine's going to be super easy because we've talked about this several times, and I know a year or two ago I even sent the policy out in packets, but then the interest rates were so great and kept climbing with the PTIF that it was not a good time to consider it. But
Right.
now they're kind of on the decline, and so of course one advantage is if we go out with Morton, Zions, whoever it might be, their interest rates may climb a little bit slower, but they also decline a little bit slower. The investment policy is it's a requirement by the Money Management Council that the county has to have an investment policy that, of course, follows the rules of money management, and it does. They definitely want to make sure anytime that we are dealing with public money that we are following the rules and regulations. So this is just a formality and stating the rules that we will follow, and any advisor that we would hire would have to follow these rules also.
Okay, I'm trying to find it here in the packet. Let's see where I'm about there.
It's always kind of a nice idea to not have all your eggs in one basket, to have a little bit of diversity. So
Okay, any
and
questions?
Mr. Edwards has reviewed this, and
Okay,
so.
excellent. Any further discussion or question? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I would move for the approval of the current Iron County investment policy as presented by Treasurer Nicole Rosenberg.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Iron County investment policy as presented by our treasurer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Treasurer, appreciate that. Personnel. Adrian was here for a long time. And got tired, yeah. Okay. Close enough. His officer's close enough. I guess we could just yell. Adrian,
Get over here.
I know.
Adrian.
You, Adrian. I'd give you money, but I'd probably do it for free.
Sorry.
Welcome back.
Yep, thank you. Yes, the personnel section of the agenda. Excuse me. We can probably group A and C together if that's okay. One's a
Fine.
transfer of a part-time, Shelby McDonald, he's actually working as a part-time bailiff in the sheriff's office, but he's gone through the process and been rostered and has been selected to to backfill a corrections deputy position in the sheriff's in the jail with the effective date of August 25th, 2019, and we're classifying that as a transfer just because he has been working as a part-time bailiff, but now he's going to go to a full-time position as a corrections deputy. And then we have a new hire under the Part C, Christopher Perez, selected to fill the part-time administrative coordinator position, which isn't a backfill, but it's a newly approved position that was part of the grant, some of the grant-funded positions that were associated with the Children's Justice Center. Again, this is a part-time position, newly approved, but we have his start date as of today, August 26, 2019.
Okay. We have a motion.
Okay, I'll move to approve with the Personnel Department in Corrections the approval of transfer of Shelby McDonald from part-time bailiff to full-time corrections deputy with associated pay increase. That's effective today.
Or yesterday.
Or yesterday. Okay, sorry. You said today on the...
On him, it was yesterday because he was actually scheduled. I don't think he ended up working, but yesterday is the beginning of the new pay period. And then on the part-time, we just used today as a...
Oh, and this one is
as a start
today.
date.
I'm sorry, I was reading the wrong one. And then lumped with that is the Children's Justice Center approval of new hire Christopher Perez as part-time administrative coordinator, effective today, newly approved grant-funded position.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the transfer of Shelby McDonald in corrections and the approval of new hire Christopher Perez in the CJC. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, and then during the last commission meeting, we talked a little bit about getting some clarification on the bilingual policy and how that's administered, and the approval of new employees. And it was decided by the commission at that time that as we have new employees become eligible, we'll just bring those before you to request formal approval. And we have a new employee, Trevor Matz, and I think we even talked about Trevor a little bit as part of the tightening up the policy or clarifying the policy. But Trevor's completed the testing. He works in the assessor's office and is being recommended by Cindy. Has got her approval, and we're just asking for his formal approval so he can start receiving that bilingual pay, which is $25 per pay period. And he is using those skills within the assessor's office and in his field work. The correction on the effective date, though, we actually completed all of that at the beginning of the last pay period. So instead of August 25th, I didn't notice that, or else I would have requested correction. But we're asking that it be approved for August 11th, which was the beginning of the last pay period that's being processed currently.
Okay. Entertain a motion on that item.
I'll move for approval of bilingual pay for Trevor Matson, effective August 20. August. As I wrote it down, I'm still reading what I crossed out. Effective August 11th of 2019, in the amount of $25 per pay period.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the bilingual pay for Trevor Matson of the assessor's office. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
All right, and the last item is just simply we've had vacated lead landfill technician position for a little while, and Bruce, the landfill supervisor, has decided to fill that position, backfill, and we went through this the posting and recruiting and interview process, met with a few of our great employees in the landfill. It was an internal position. It was a tough decision. We had some good candidates that were interested in the lead position, but at the end of it, Jeremy Truman was selected by Bruce. So we're wanting him to be approved for that promotion from landfill technician to lead landfill technician, effective August 25th, 2019, and that also just comes with the promotion pay increase, which is 5% per county policy, please.
Okay, I'll move to, in the landfill department, for personnel, I move to approve the promotion of Jerry Truman as landfill lead technician, effective August 25th, with associated 5% pay increase per policy. That's a backfill, vacant lead position.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the promotion of Jeremy Truman in the landfill department as delineated in the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have minutes of, well, wait, after I sign these. Okay, we have minutes of July 22nd, 2019 of our Iron County Commission meeting. I would entertain a motion regarding those.
I would move for approval of the minutes of July 22nd.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the Iron County Commission meeting minutes of July 22nd, 2019. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Sign those. Okay, item 11 is a discussion regarding the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual. Note, this portion of the meeting may be closed per UCA.
Would you like to maybe talk about non-delegated?
Yeah,
Can we do that?
yeah, thank you. Per UCA 52-4-205A, but before we go there, are there any, is there any,
Non-delegated?
I think my brain's going on me because it's lacking food. Is there any discussion or matters to bring up regarding prairie dogs? Seeing none, how about county board? Okay.
No.
All right. I would entertain we do need to go into closed session. I would entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded that we do go into closed session for the reason previously mentioned. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. We are in closed session. We're moving to closed session.
Hey, we're streaming. Which, by the way, whatever Josh did, he got it fixed.
Did he?
Yeah.
Did you end up streaming part of the meeting?
Yeah, which is good, because I wasn't getting great audio. Oh, my phone's still on in the other room.
Peter, you're good, man. Anybody who would want the job of an HR guy has got to be a little bit crazy.
Do we, well, no, you're heading off to that. We can discuss that some more when you're ready. When you guys agree. What's happened to this point, just so you know, has just been, I've had instructions off the mic about that, and the way that he told me to relay the information. I'm remembering now, he said send a condensed, like a summarized version to the chair, send the full report to the department head, so that's why Sheriff Carpenter has everything. You know, kind of how, that's why the other two commissioners. And in my summary to chair, it's like questions.
These hats, they couldn't remember what you had last year.
I don't remember either.
More to the point, which one do you want? You guys got black or red and blue?
I like red and blue.
Easy decision.
Well, but if somebody else wants it, I'll take that.
I will take what, I really don't care. I'll
Paul?
take whatever's left over.
You want the black embroidery or the red and blue?
I don't care.
There's two red and blues, not that.
You decide. I'll take whatever's left.
I think,
It's up to you, John. You pick.
don't care.
Here.
I'm not a big hat guy anyway.
Watch this. Here, Paul. You pick a hand. This one? Okay, like I really don't know what's what.
I don't care, really. I
Wow.
don't wear hats on my
Double blinds, there you go. Which one?
I got.
Oh, well,
Unless you want the black.
no, I like the color.
Okay, good.
Okay,
By the way, that's been streaming.
are you ready? Okay. Chair declares a recess of the county commission meeting for an indefinite amount of time, but we definitely will be back later today. Let's go ahead.